T minus 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. Ignition. Liftoff. Liftoff at 34 minutes after the hour.
Do you know how to fly a rocket ship? Well, engineers know how to build them, but mathematicians know how to fly them. In 1953, Katherine Johnson broke barriers for women and minorities by joining the all-male flight task group at NASA. She impacted the U.S. space program while facing adversity, and she eventually paved the path for women and minorities, not just in the workplace, but in all aspects of life. Katherine Johnson was born on August 26, 1918 in White Sulphur Springs, West Virginia. She was quoted as saying, "I counted everything. I counted the steps to the road, the steps up to the church, the number of dishes and silverware I washed, and anything that could be counted, I did." By the time she was 10 years old, she was a high school freshman. Katherine skipped through the grades to graduate from high school at 14 and college at 18. She was one of 3 black students selected to integrate the graduate program at the then all-white West Virginia University. In 1953, Johnson quit her job as a substitute math teacher in Newport News, Virginia, and took a job at NASA as a computer, doing analysis on things like gust elevation for aircrafts. From 1958 until she retired in 1983, she worked as an aerospace technologist. In 1953, Katherine Johnson began working at Langley Research Center. Within 2 weeks of starting her job as a colored computer, she was moved up to the flight task group that calculated the flight trajectories for astronauts' takeoff and landing. For years, Katherine Johnson worked closely with the engineers in the Flight Research Division on issues related to airplane gust elevation and wake turbulence. Then history intervened for a second time. The launching of the Soviet satellite Sputnik kicked off the space race between the U.S. and the USSR and hastened the transformation of the NCA into the National Aeronautics and Space Administration, NASA, America's space agency. Katherine Johnson made critical technical contributions, which included calculating the trajectory of the 1961 flight of Alan Shepard, the first American in space. She is also credited with verifying the calculations made by early electronic computers of John Glenn's 1962 launch to orbit the Moon and the 1969 Apollo 11 trajectories to the Moon. Johnson worked on the Space Shuttle program and the early Resources satellite. Katherine faced adversity in her workplace by being underestimated and segregated. Part of a pool of female computers, and continuing until 1986, she worked by hand and then with mechanical calculators. Starting at the African American only West Area Computers, but moving after 2 weeks to Langley's Flight Research Division. As the work grew more complex, Katherine was tasked with calculations to propel space capsules into orbit around the Moon and to send landing units to and from the lunar surface. She also earned kudos for plotting the backup navigational charts that would enable astronauts to guide their ships by the stars in case of electronic failures. In 1962, computers were used for the first time to calculate John Glenn's history-making orbit around Earth. But according to Katherine, NASA's officials called on her to verify the numbers. "They knew I had done most of the calculations, so they let me do it," Katherine said. She didn't want to just do the work. She wanted to know the hows and the whys and then the why nots. None of the other women had ever asked questions before, but by asking questions, Johnson began to stand out. She was told that women didn't participate in the briefings or attend the meetings. She asked if there were a law against it. The answer, of course, was no, and so Johnson began to attend briefings. A NASA mathematician, Johnson's computations have influenced every major space shuttle program from Mercury through the shuttle. That year, FDR signed an order to hire more African American workers, and 2 years later, in 1943, Langley started hiring college-educated black women with a background in math and chemistry. She also gained the Apollo Group Achievement Award, which included one of only 300 flags flown to the moon on board the Apollo 11 and many more. She's played a role in every major U.S. space program, from calculating the trajectory for Alan Shepard's inaugural flight to the space shuttle era. Her inspirational work for the U.S. space program since 1953 predates the creation of NASA. She calculated the trajectory for the 1969 Apollo flight to the moon in 1970 and Apollo 13's mission to the moon. When Apollo 13's mission was aborted, she helped to safely return the crew to Earth 4 days later through work on backup procedures and charts. And after 33 years of service, Katherine G. Johnson retired from NASA in 1986. For her pioneering work in the field of navigation problems, Katherine Johnson received the Group Achievement Award presented to NASA's Lunar Spacecraft and Operations Team. She also earned the Honorary Doctor of Laws from SUNY Farmingdale in 1988 and was selected as the West Virginia State College Outstanding Alumnus of the Year in 1999. In May 2006, Capital of College, Laurel, Maryland, awarded Katherine an Honorary Doctor of Science. In addition to these honors, Katherine is proud that her daughters, Katherine and Constance, became educators, while Joylette recently retired from a successful career at Lockheed Martin as a computer analyst. Katherine Johnson paved pathways for others to make an impact on NASA and on our society. Macy Jemison is the first African-American female astronaut. In 1992, she flew into space aboard the Endeavour, becoming the first African-American woman in space. Guion Guy Bluford is a former NASA astronaut who is the first African-American to fly into space. He flew 4 shuttle missions. On June 18, 1983, Sally Ride became the first American woman to fly into space when the Space Shuttle Challenger launched on mission STS-7. Katherine Johnson's personal story intersected with the grand leap of the 20th century for the first time in 1993. She has encouraged students to pursue careers in science and technology. Katherine Johnson was awarded the Presidential Medal of Freedom, the nation's highest civilian honor, by President Barack Obama on November 24, 2015. On the 55th anniversary of Shepard's historic flight, to attend a ceremony where a $30 million, 40,000 square foot computational research facility was named in her honor. As a part of the event, Johnson also received a Silver Snoopy Award from Leland Melvin, an astronaut and former NASA Associate Administrator for Education. Often called the Astronaut's Award, the Silver Snoopy goes to people who have made an outstanding contribution to flight safety and mission success. She often speaks to students about her own extraordinary career and encourages all of them to pursue STEM careers. Johnson tells them, "We will always have STEM with us. Some things will drop out of the public eye and will go away, but there will always be science, engineering, and technology. And there will always be mathematics. Everything is physics and math." Johnson has served on different panels and has heard from students who have already told her to go into a STEM career after listening to her talk. She keeps in touch with NASA employees and will call on them when needed to help drive home the importance of STEM to audiences. At one recent event in North Carolina, Johnson mentioned to the students that she could go get an astronaut to talk to them. The school hooked her up on a phone to the PA system, and they were able to have a conversation with astronaut Leland Melvin.
11, 10, 9, 8. Ignition sequence has started. 6, 5, 4, 3, 1, 0. We have commit and we have liftoff at 2:13. The Saturn V building up to 7.6 million pounds of thrust, and it has cleared the tower.
This is mission control. Here we go. It's a beauty. It's another beauty.
I think it's a dynamic off flight. The trajectory looks good. They show a 1.5 mile altitude at this time.
Katherine Johnson changed the U.S. to a more equal place with opportunities for anybody of any race or gender.